In an ancient parish church in Cyprus, an old woman was praying before an icon, a holy picture of a saint. And as she prayed, she became convinced that there was something special about this particular icon. But when she told others about this, she felt a little foolish. There was nothing about the painting that marked it out as special or in any way different from any other of the icons in the little church. Yet, the woman persisted in her belief. And so the parish priest had the icon examined. Lo and behold, beneath the surface of that very ordinary icon lay hidden a much older and immensely more valuable painting of the Holy Mother of God. Somehow, the woman, in her prayer, had been able to perceive something that was not visible to the naked eye. Literally, a treasure had been uncovered. In our Old Testament reading today, the Israelites were giving a treasure. In their hunger for God, He gave them the gift of manna, bread from heaven, food for their journey to the Promised Land. But it was a treasure that they did not understand or recognize. So they needed Moses to explain it to them. However, they had been given an even greater treasure, which they also failed to recognize: the treasure of their freedom. God had liberated them from their slavery in Egypt, and now at the first hurdle, they complained about their fate and longed for the well-fed days of their slavery in Egypt. At that moment, their God-given freedom was an unopened treasure and an unappreciated gift, which they had not yet discovered. They would gladly have exchanged their freedom for a loaf of bread. In the gospel today, the crowds following Jesus in a similar way did not recognize the treasure they had found in Him. They were following Him for superficial reasons, because they had witnessed the miraculous feeding of the 5,000, which we heard in last week's gospel. They were following Jesus because He had fed their stomachs. They failed to appreciate the true meaning of the miracle, unable to see beyond the surface. They were like children who are more captivated by the wrapping paper than by the gift inside. Jesus explains that He can give more than physical food for the body. He Himself is the bread of life, in whom humanity's deepest hungers are satisfied. Not simply bread that satisfied physical hunger, but bread of life, bread for life. Jesus is able to answer the human heart's infinite longing for love, our fundamental thirst for meaning, and for life itself. Like Moses before him, he explains to the people the treasure that God is offering, the food which leads to eternal life. All they need do is respond by believing in Him. Even though these readings are ancient readings, they speak to our lives today. Jesus continues to invite us to recognize the treasures that God in His love is offering us, but which we so often overlook or fail to appreciate. When we look at our own situation, our own lives, or of our church and world, perhaps our initial reaction is to do what the Israelites did, to complain, to moan, and to grumble about our lot in life. God's response is always to send us His blessings and His love, just as He showered down bread to answer the Israelites' hunger. You see, the challenge for us is to listen to the voice of those who, like Moses, call us to recognize the goodness of God, the freedom that He brings, the promised land to which He is leading us. I myself received a voice like that a few weeks ago as I was mired deep in the grief and sorrow of the loss of my wife, my life partner. My sister-in-law, who herself lost her husband 3 years ago, sent me a simple text wherein she said that even in our grief and sorrow and pain and hurt, we can see God's blessings. The blessing, she reminded me of the union of my wife and I, the blessing of our children and our grandchildren. Now, in no way did that pull me completely out of my grief and sorrow. Only time will do that. But it did make me feel much better and able to move on, to recognize that great blessing of our union. Jesus makes the same appeal to us as He made to the crowd that day. He said, "Believe in me. Believe in me. Look beyond the surface and respond to the invitation that God is making. Look beyond the bread and the wine and see and feel and experience and recognize the presence of Jesus." The belief that He calls for is not simply a mere intellectual assent. It involves much more than that. It is belief that involves that heavy word, commitment. Remember, in John's Gospel, to believe in Jesus means quite simply to be committed to His way of love. It was in John's Gospel we hear Jesus say, "Love one another as I have loved you." It is what Paul in the second reading calls the way you have learned from Christ. It is only in being committed to Christ-like love that our deepest hungers and thirsts are satisfied. He who comes to me will never hunger. He who believes in me will never thirst. That is the treasure that Jesus sets before us this day and every day. We recognize this. We are able to discover this treasure and really own it as our own only when we commit ourselves to Him, to following in His way of love.